HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Low Desert, Gangster Stories, by Tod Goldberg, read by Johnny Heller. A prisoner cannot free himself. The Talmud. The Royal Californian. 3 hours out of the hospital, his left foot too swollen for a shoe, Shane's car breaks down. It's July, 1,000,000,000 degrees outside. Interstate 10, a gray ribbon of shit unspooling east out of Palm Springs toward Arizona. Not exactly where he wanted to go, but who the fuck wants to go to Arizona? It's what was on the other side of Arizona that mattered to Shane, the chance that there might be another life in that direction. He never liked being on the coast. The one time he ever tried to swim in the Pacific, during a vacation with his dad, so over 20 years ago, half his lifetime now, he was gripped with the ungodly realization that, unlike a pool, there were no sides. You were always in the deep end. It was a feeling that stuck with him, even when he was in one of those towns in the San Fernando Valley that sounded like an escape route from an old Western. North Hills, West Hills, Hidden Hills. The Honda was the one damn thing Shane thought he could depend on. But as soon as he pulled out of the parking lot at Centinela Hospital in Inglewood, the check engine light flashed on. 100,000 miles he'd put on that fucking car, and not a single problem. And the one time he really needed it, he was telling him to fuck off. He didn't have the time, or the money to swing by the mechanic, considering he'd left the hospital before the nurse had filled out the paperwork for the cops, which was a problem. Not as big a problem as staying would have been. It wasn't the kind of thing that would have the cops trawling the city for him, especially since the wound did look self-inflicted, since it was, someone else holding his fucking hand while he shot himself with his own damn gun. Shane couldn't remember if he still had AAA, but he called anyway. "Looks like you canceled your account 6 months ago," the customer service agent predictably said. Rachel must have done it after she moved out, like how she canceled their credit cards, or how she took their dog Manny to get his teeth cleaned on the same morning she kicked him out of the house, knowing full well Shane wouldn't have the cash to pick the dog up. God, he loved that dog. Probably more than he loved Rachel. Not probably, actually. If he got out of this fucked-up situation, he was going to buy another dog that looked like Manny, and name him Manny, too. "How much is it to re-up?" Shane asked. $68, which gets you 7 miles of towing service. "What if I need to go farther?" Shane asked, thinking, "What the hell? Maybe I'll have AAA tow me to Arizona, give me someone to talk to. Or maybe he'd just steal the tow truck. He could do that. He was capable of anything now." "You'd need the premier membership for that," the customer service agent said. And then he began to tell Shane the particulars of how amazing the premier membership was, going on about all the times you could get your car towed 100 miles, the discounts you can get at resorts nationwide, Shane thinking that the only people who could afford this fucking service were the people least likely to need it. He had $274 in cash in his pocket. Gold Mike, the fucker who shot him in the foot, gave it to him as a parting gift after he'd asked him to stop by their storage unit by the Forum, Shane thinking it was to plan the night's job. Gold Mike with other ideas. "It's not working out," Gold Mike told him. The storage unit was half empty already. Gold Mike's van filled with their DJ and karaoke equipment, all their locksmith materials, plus their 3 industrial-sized lockboxes filled with pills. They'd been coming up light lately, but for a while it was a good living. Black-tie weddings in the Palisades, bar mitzvahs in Calabasas, retirement parties in Bel Air. How it worked, one of them would be inside at the wedding, singing or DJing, and the other would be parking cars and collecting addresses off of insurance cards and registrations. 3-hour wedding meant they could get as many keys made as they wanted, spend the next couple days casing the house, go in and steal all the pills, which wasn't a crime any cop gave a shit about, particularly when there's no evidence of breaking and entering. Plus, it was a victimless crime. Shane not feeling too bad about taking a cancer patient's Klonopin, knowing full well CVS would hook them back up in 30 minutes, maybe less. They didn't steal jewelry or TVs or cars or any of that shit, just pills. Then this whole opiate crisis started getting on the news right when weed got legalized, so people in California started loading up on edibles and vape pens instead of Percocet and benzos. "It's just an ebb," Shane said. "I'm moving my operating base," Gold Mike said. "Got a friend in Reno, says it's jumping off there. Everyone's hooked on something. He can get me into the hotels. That's next level." "Cool," Shane said. "I'm down to relocate." His only steady legal gigs were running karaoke at Forest Bar in Culver City and a honky-tonk in Thousand Oaks called Denim and Diamonds, across the street from a bar where a guy went fucking nuts and murdered a dozen people. "You're not hearing me," Gold Mike said. "You can't hit the high notes anymore. If you can't sing, this whole operation is moot." Moot. Where the fuck could he learn that word? "Don't make it weird, all right? We had a good run. Who needs a high note? You think Mick can hit a high note? Who the fuck is Mick?" "From the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger." "Bro," Gold Mike said, "I don't even like music." "So that's it? No severance? You think you're getting Cobra up in this bitch? Come on, man." "Manny's chemo put me back 10 grand, Shane said. Manny had a tumor on his ear that turned out to be a treatable cancer, in the sense that the dog could get treatment and still die, but he hadn't yet, as far as Shane knew. I've been upside down ever since. That was like 18 months ago." Gold Mike took out his wallet, thumbed out a few 50s, put them on an empty shelf next to a broken turntable. "Couple $100, Shane said. "How about you give me 50% of everything, or I walk into a police station? How about that?" And then Shane pulled out his gun, which had actually been a gift from Gold Mike, a .380. He'd given it to him after a robbery went sideways. A Vietnam War vet came home and found Shane in his bathroom, beat the fucking shit out of him with a golf club. Gold Mike coming in at the last minute and knocking the fucker out with a taser. You pull out your gun, you gotta be ready to use it. No talking shit, no hands up, nothing, just pop, pop, pop. That's what cops are always saying. It's what Gold Mike had taught Shane, too, which is how he also had all of Gold Mike's credit cards and his driver's license, in addition to $274. 7 miles is fine, Shane said to the customer service agent, and gave his location on the 10, half a mile from the Monroe exit, according to the GPS on his phone, which had occurred to him he'd need to ditch. Shane examined all the Main Street names in either direction: Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Jackson, Calhoun, Van Buren, trying to find a street that sounded friendly, a place he could tell the customer service dude to find a room for him. But the dead presidents were giving him bad juju. He wasn't going anywhere near that fucking asshole Andrew Jackson. "There any motels near Jefferson Street?" he asked, thinking Jefferson seemed about 65% decent, relative to our other slave-owning asshole founding fathers. "I need a place with a karaoke bar, if possible." He had a hustle he liked to do where he'd bet people that he could make them cry, and then he'd bust out Brick by Ben Folds 5, and every girl who ever had an abortion would be in a puddle. It didn't make him proud, but he had bills to pay. "Let's see what we have here." The agent made a whistling sound. "Well, the Royal Californian is 6.7 miles from where you are," the agent said, "and located between Jefferson and Monroe on Highway 111. He paused, and Shane could hear him clicking away on his computer. "They have free HBO and free Wi-Fi, a pool, and a sports bar with karaoke. If that works, shall I charge it to your existing credit card and get the truck to you?" "How about I give the driver cash?" Shane said. He needed as little paper trail as possible. "I'll need to check with my manager," the agent said, and put Shane on hold. He was parked beneath a billboard that advertised the wonder of waterfront living in the desert, and showed a happy couple of indeterminate race walking into what appeared to be an Italian lakeside villa, surrounded by palm trees. He looked to the west and could make out the obvious signs of civilization. The sign for Starbucks, an RV park called The Long Run, a billboard touting an upcoming concert by Rick Springfield at the Fantasy Springs Casino. That fucking guy. "We'll have a tow truck to you in about 20 minutes, the agent said. "May we get anything else for you?" He looked down. His foot wept blood, the gauze packed around the wound a deep red. Shit. He'd need something to dull the pain soon, and then stop the sepsis, which was a thing he didn't worry about usually, but this was not a usual day. "Iodine? Anyone carry that?" No, sir, I don't think so." It was worth a shot. Shane hung up. It was nearly 4 o'clock. He was supposed to be singing Come On Eileen in a couple hours, always his first song over at Forrest's. Everyone always losing their shit when he did that Tura-lura, tura-lura-a bit, like it was 1982 and they were 13 at the 8th grade dance. That fucking song. More trouble than it was worth, that was for sure. He couldn't think about that now. He needed to get Gold Mike's body out of the trunk. Oh, well, parts of Gold Mike's body. It's 2009, and Shane's working at the Black Angus in Northridge. They've got something they call the Fun Bar, a relic from the disco years. Lit-up floor, big dark booths, great sound system, but no one dancing. Just frat boys over from the college drinking vodka and cranberry like they all have UTIs. At first he's just doing karaoke like anybody does karaoke. Stands up there and lets some drunk come up and sing American Pie. Helps him out when he realizes the song is 8 minutes long, and he doesn't have the wind. Flirts with the bartender. Maybe gets a hand job in the dry storage. Woman or man, he didn't give a fuck. Hand job was a hand job. Shane equal opportunity back then, because of all the coke and a profound lack of giving a fuck. Love is love, friction is friction. Maybe a little guilt now, thinking about it. Thinking about how he did Rachel wrong. Staring at the ceiling fan twirling in his room at the Royal Californian. 11 p.m. Still 100 degrees outside. Giant flying roaches committing suicide against his window every couple minutes. Shane dying for a fucking Percocet. 1 million of them still in Gold Mike's van. Shane could hit himself for being so stupid, not thinking this all through. His foot throbbing, sweat sticking his shirt to his chest. His own fault, Rachel, that is. A lot of lying. Fuck it, had been his point of view back when he worked at the Angus. Go home with $100 for the night and an empty load? Fuck it. Problem was, he'd kept that point of view long into his relationship with Rachel, and she was not a fuck-it kind of person, so he pretended it was just how performers were, though by the time Rachel came along, he wasn't a performer anymore. Baby, he'd tell her, you gotta just say fuck it when you're in this business, otherwise every night would crush your spirit. And Rachel, she'd say, then you should get another way to earn a living. And so he had. Kind of. Thing was, Shane could really sing. All this other shit was ephemeral. His talent, man, that was in his genetic code. His dad played in the Catskills back in the day, singing in cover bands. He even came out to California that one time he brought Shane with him, doing a night at Melvin's in Palm Springs. Typically, Dad would come back home the first week of September with a roll of cash, and for a month everything would be good between him and Shane's mom. Dinners out, new clothes, Shane's mom falling in love all over again. Talking about how maybe this year they'd get married. Maybe she'd go to college, then maybe law school. Shane's mother always talking about how she was going to be a lawyer. But by the time she died, she'd spent 25 years as the lunch lady at Rensselaer Point Elementary, down in Troy. She'd had Shane when she was 15, dead by 51. Got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's and put a fucking noose around her neck 2 hours later. Shane's dad saying, maybe she didn't really have the old-timers because wouldn't she have forgotten? His dad was still alive, that was the irony, doing what Shane thought of as the Dead Man's Tour. Buddy Holly and Elvis tribute shows at Indian casinos in Connecticut. Shane keeping track of him on the internet. That fucker doing pretty well. But the Angus. In comes Gold Mike. Sits at a table right by Shane's kit. Nurses a Diet Coke. Really gets into it when Shane sings, tapping his foot, bobbing his head. When Shane hits his full register during Come On Eileen, Gold Mike stands up and whoops. When he goes on break 15 minutes later, Gold Mike follows him outside, where Shane is having a smoke and watching the traffic on Corbin Avenue. You got a nice presence, Gold Mike says. Thanks, man, Shane says. Wasting it out here, if you want my opinion, Gold Mike says. Just waiting to be discovered. That's not ever gonna happen, Gold Mike says, like he knows. He's maybe 27, but he's one of those guys who talks like he's been around the world 50 times. Shane's seen Gold Mike on the circuit. Weber's in Reseda. Sagebrush Cantina out in Calabasas. Shutters in Santa Monica. Gold Mike fingers a diamond-encrusted V that hangs around his neck. Shane counts 25 little diamonds. Whatever, Shane says. He takes one more drag from his cigarette, then puts it out on the bottom of his shoe, like it's a thing he does all the time, which it isn't. Whatever, Gold Mike says. I insult you and you say whatever? Passivity, man, that's an illness. You want me to hit you or something? Gold Mike laughs hard. He's one of those Armenian dudes who shaves his head just to look tough, Shane making out the outline of a full head of stubble. Shane isn't much of a fighter. He's the kind of person who will stab a guy, though. Put a screwdriver in someone's eye. You're either a pussy or you're not. Shane probably is one, but he's not squeamish around blood, and that helps. I like you, Goldmike says. You a child molester or anything? What kind of fucking question is that? I've been watching you, Goldmike says. You put your dick in anything. Just need to be clear what I don't want to get down with. How long have you been watching me? A couple weeks, Goldmike says, like it's perfectly normal. You ever do any time? You ever do any time? A couple days here and there, Goldmike says. That must impress some people. Goldmike laughs again, but he doesn't respond. What's the V stand for? Shane points at Goldmike's neck. My last name is Vosky, Goldmike says. Okay. It means gold in Armenian. That's lucky, Shane thinks, then says, You speak Armenian? Because there's no way Goldmike wasn't born in Reseda. Fuck no, Goldmike says. It's a dead language. He points over his shoulder. I went to CSUN and everyone always wanted me to join the Armenian Student Union. Bunch of assholes named Gabarian talking about getting the genocide recognized. Not my game. I'm multinational. Speak Spanish, French, got a little Russian. Enough I could probably get by at Odessa. You ever been there? The OG Russian restaurant in Las Vegas? No, Shane said. I don't get down with the Russians, not since Fiddler on the Roof. Goldmike raised his eyebrows in mild amusement. Shane didn't make him for a fan of musical theater, but then he said, What's your last name? Solomon, Shane says. Does that mean something? Peace, Shane says. Yeah? That's my mother told me, he says. It's from the Hebrew word, shalom. You speak Hebrew? Enough to DJ a bar mitzvah. Goldmike leans forward, motions Shane to lean in too. You want to make some real money, Shalom? Shane finally fell asleep at 1 a.m. but woke up again at 5:47 a.m. Sunrise filling his room on the second floor of the Royal Californian with orange light, his foot like an anvil at the bottom of his leg. He unwrapped the gauze and examined the wound. His foot had swollen to twice its normal size, at least, even though the wound wasn't that big, an inch around. The nurse told him yesterday that the bullet shattered 2 of his cuneiform bones, that he'd need surgery to stabilize his foot. A couple pins would be inserted, and then he'd be in a hard cast for 6 to 8 weeks. But he was going to need to speak to the police before any of that happened. That wasn't going to work. Not with 66% of Goldmike rotting in his storage unit, the other 33% in the Honda's trunk. Shane thinking 1% was probably drying on the floor, blood and viscera and whatnot. He chopped Goldmike's head off using the fire hose hatchet, then cut the head up into smaller pieces to make it easier to shuttle around, then took off Goldmike's hands and feet too, because he thought that would make it harder to identify him. But with DNA, fuck, it probably didn't matter. But Shane hadn't been thinking too straight. He'd taken the battery out of Goldmike's van and poured acid over the rest of the body, but that was just cosmetic. For sure, Shane's DNA was in the unit and the van and on Goldmike's body, but then his DNA was all over everything regardless. They were business partners. That was easy enough to explain. Plus, he had no legitimate reason to kill Goldmike. Anyone who saw them together knew they were a team. The only proof that it was Shane who'd plugged him an excessive number of times was probably the hole in Shane's fucking foot and the gun itself, which Shane had tucked under his mattress. Well, and Goldmike's head and all that, which was now in his hotel room safe, zipped up inside a Whole Foods freezer bag filled with ice. Shane stepped out onto his second-floor balcony, which was just wide enough to hurl yourself over, and lit up his second-to-last cigarette. He'd given up smoking when Manny got cancer. Truth be told, he sort of blamed himself for that whole thing, but it was the only drug he had on his person, and he needed about 10 minutes of mental clarity to figure out how he was going to get himself out of this situation. He needed to get rid of Goldmike's parts. He needed to get rid of the gun. He needed to get himself an alibi, or he needed to change his identity, which didn't seem like a plausible turn of events, but he was open to whatever presented itself to him. He needed to go across the street to the Circle K and get some disposable phones. He also was in a fuck-ton of pain, and under normal circumstances might go find a dispensary and get some edibles, but he wasn't showing anyone his ID. He'd get some ice and soak his foot in the tub. That should bring down the swelling. He'd get some bleach from house cleaning, put a couple drops in the water. Maybe that would disinfect the wound? Then he needed to get a new car. The Royal Californian sat on a stretch of Highway 111 in Indio that could have been Carson City or Bakersfield or Van Nuys or anywhere else where someone had the wise idea to plant a palm tree and then surround it with cement. This wasn't the part of Greater Palm Springs where people came to visit. It was nowhere near the leafy garden hotel he'd stayed in with his dad, the Ingleside Inn, unless they were going to court or bailing someone out, since the hotel was a block west of the Larson Justice Center, the county courthouse and jail. He hadn't realized it at first, not until he was checking in and the clerk gave him a brochure of local amenities. Page 1 had dining options. Page 2 was local entertainment and information about how to get to the polo fields a mile south, where Coachella was held every year. As close as Shane was ever going to get to that. And then page 3 was all bail bonds, attorneys, and AA meetings. Made sense then when the clerk didn't seem bothered by his bloody foot and that he didn't have ID when he gave him Gold Mike's visa to check in. He'd given the AAA driver an extra $15 to park his car just down the block, in a neighborhood of taupe houses called the Sandpiper Estates. The word estate, apparently one of those words whose meaning had been lost to insincerity, since all Shane saw were a lot of children standing by themselves on front lawns made of rock, staring into their phones. Shane left the keys in the ignition and the doors unlocked. Best case scenario, the car would be stripped clean in a few days. Worst case, it would get towed to some county yard and there it would stay, forever. Shane counted 7 cars in the Royal Californian's parking lot. A van with a Save Mono Lake sticker faded on the bumper. A white pickup truck missing the tailgate. 2 Hondas that looked just like his dead Accord. A red Buick Regal, probably a rental. No one bought fucking Buicks. An SUV, another SUV. He tried to imagine who owned each car and what their favorite song might be. Shane always interested if people picked a sad song or a happy one. You could tell a lot about a person based on their pick. Could imagine what they thought was going to happen to them in their life, or could better understand their situation. Rachel's favorite song was American Girl by Tom Petty. His mom's favorite song was Suspicious Minds by Elvis. Shane? He didn't have a favorite. Not anymore. Songs stopped having meaning for him. A man of about 70 walked out of his ground-floor room and into the parking lot, wearing blue boxer shorts, a white V-neck undershirt, and a pair of black sandals, keys in his hand. A Sinatra guy, Shane thought. Probably my way or come fly with me. Shane made him for the red Buick Regal. It was backed into a space, always the sign of an asshole. Instead, the old man looked up and down the block, which was deserted, then crossed the street to a 1-story office building with storefront-style signs advertising a law office. Terry Cales, criminal defense, DUI, divorce, immigration. Accounting offices, a Mexican bakery, a notary, and a place where you could get your cell phone fixed. Not Sinatra. Neil Diamond. He went inside the law office, came out a few minutes later holding a manila envelope, unlocked a silver Mercedes using his key fob, the lights blinking twice, disappeared inside, started it up, rolled back across the street to the parking lot. A woman came walking out of the old man's hotel room. She looked young, maybe 16. Met the old guy in the parking lot, got in the passenger side of the car, and it pulled away. 5 minutes later, the Benz was parked in the Royal Californian's lot, and the old man was headed back into the hotel, which is when he spotted Shane up on his perch. "You always stand around at dawn watching people?" "Just having a smoke," Shane said, "while I contemplate which car to steal." "Why not just get an Uber?" Shane pointed at the man's Benz. "German engineering has always appealed to me," he said, "but as a Jew it feels shameful, so you're safe." Shane telling him he was a Jew to put him at ease. No one ever felt scared of Jews, but also just to see how he reacted, Cale seeming like a Jewish last name. Shane flicked his cigarette butt over the balcony. It landed, still smoking, a few feet away from the man. "You mind stepping on that for me?" Shane pointed at his own foot. "I'm down a limb." The old man scratched his stomach absently, but didn't make a move to the cigarette. "You here for a court date?" "No," Shane said, "not today." "You need a lawyer," he said. "I'm right across the street." "How much for a murder defense?" Shane asked, but he laughed. A big joke. 2 guys at dawn, bullshitting. "Less than you'd think. Terry walked over to the butt, stepped on it, cocked his head sideways to get a better look at Shane's foot up above him. "Looks like self-defense to me." "Now keep that in mind," Shane said. "My AC is broken, so I keep office hours at Cactus Pete's." He pointed at the bar attached to the Royal Californian. "Be there until at least 6:30. I'll buy you a drink. We can talk about your case." "I'm innocent." "Yeah," Terry said. "That's what we'll tell him." Shane couldn't tell if Cactus Pete's had a kitschy design aesthetic or if it was just a leftover from the 70s. He'd never been in a bar with shag carpeting. The VIP area, set off from the tiny dance floor and DJ booth by a red velvet rope, had high-backed booths that reminded Shane fondly of the Angus. Terry Cales sitting in the biggest one, sipping on a glass of something brown, papers spread out in front of him, a cell phone to his ear, another cell phone and his car keys keeping his papers from blowing away, the overhead fans working overtime to keep the room cool. He didn't look up when Shane walked in, at least as far as Shane could tell, which was hard, because Terry had on sunglasses, the bar's windows flooding the room with bright light. It was just before 3. Tomorrow at this time he'd be in the clear. That was the hoped-for result. He'd found a 99-cent store 2 blocks away, limped his ass over there, his foot on fire, picked up a change of clothes, some sunglasses, a Padres baseball cap, went next door to the Circle K, got a disposable phone. He was about out of cash now, but he'd figure that out. On the dance floor, a woman was setting up for karaoke, and for reasons Shane could not fathom, there was a guy dressed as a clown sitting at the bar. Green hair, red nose, striped pants, big red shoes, stars and striped shirt and vest. Back of the vest, embroidered in rhinestones, it said HermieTheClown.com. He had a cup of coffee in the desert sun, reading the sports page. Shane sat down at the bar but kept a stool between himself and Hermie. "Get you something?" the woman setting up the karaoke asked. She was younger than Terry, older than the clown, somewhere on the plus side of 50. She had on a tank top that showed off her shoulders, muscular but lean, and a full sleeve of tattoos down her right arm. Shane saw 2 names, Charlotte and Randy, amid flowers, sunsets, and spiderwebs. She had a name tag pinned above her left breast that said Glory. "Was wondering what time the show was," Shane said. 6, Glory said. "You sing?" "Yeah." "We have a lot of regulars, so sign up early." "Truth is," Shane said, "I was wondering if I could warm up first." When Glory didn't respond, he said, "I'm staying here." "Room?" "Number 204, he said. "On account of my foot. Got to have surgery in the morning. Just trying to have a good night before I get the knife." He looked over at the clown. "Unless you've got first dibs." "He don't speak," Glory said, "or sing." The clown nodded in the affirmative. Glory leaned over the bar and examined Shane's foot. So did the silent clown, who blew lightly on a whistle he kept around his neck. Shane slid off his flip-flop, wiggled his toes. "You can't be in here without shoes," Glory said. "Just letting it breathe," Shane said. Glory nodded solemnly, like they'd come to some agreement about life. "What's your song?" "I mix it up," Shane said, and out of the corner of his eye he saw Terry slide his sunglasses down his nose, but mostly Neil Diamond. Shane was midway through Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, when Terry came over and stood next to the clown, closed his eyes, mouthed the lyrics. Terry and the clown swayed back and forth together, Shane digging down deep for the end, giving it some soul, some real pathos. "Again," Terry said, and tossed Shane a 50, so he did it again. Terry had tears in his eyes this time, clearly going through some shit. When he finished, Terry said, "One more, your pick," and then went and sat back in his booth, the clown following him. Shane went with Song Sung Blue. When he was finished, Terry motioned him over to his table. "You really having surgery?" Terry asked once they were all comfortable in the sweaty half-moon banquette. Terry's shit spread out everywhere. Shane eyeing his car keys, his plan coming into full focus. Hermie busy on his phone answering texts. Popular fucking clown. "I heard you talking to Glory." "Yeah," Shane said. "At the hospital up the street." He'd seen it in the brochure. It was named for John F. Kennedy, which Shane thought was yet another example of bad presidential juju. Whole town was lousy with it. "Good hospital," Terry said. "All of my best clients have died there." "Like the girl this morning?" "That was my daughter." "Really?" "Really?" "Yeah," Terry said. I've got limited visitation at the moment, so I take what I can get.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?